It's the most contested U.S. Senate race in the country. Incumbent Republican Thom Tillis seeking his second term.
What I'm going to do is listen to you.
And his Democratic challenger, Cal Cunningham, a former North Carolina state senator.
In North Carolina, the truth still matters.
At stake, control of the U.S. Senate. Millions of dollars have poured into the campaigns. Outside special interest groups are spending millions more to sway your vote. And it's turned ugly.
And while Tillis voted for a pay raise for himself.
Sound corrupt? That's Cal Cunningham.
Before you cast your ballot, find out how the candidates plan to help struggling families.
No justice!
How far the feds should go to keep our streets safe. And breaking right now, the fight over who gets to nominate a new Supreme Court justice. Live from your local election headquarters. This is the U.S. Senate Debate, North Carolina.
Welcome to the U.S. Senate Debate for North Carolina. I'm your host and moderator, CBS 17 anchor Marius Payton. Here tonight, Republican incumbent Senator Thom Tillis and Democratic challenger Cal Cunningham. Gentlemen, welcome. Our debate is airing statewide tonight on Nexstar TV stations all across North Carolina, and we are live streaming on Nexstar digital sites. You can join the conversation from anywhere on social media using the hashtag #NCSenateDebate. Along with myself, our moderators asking the questions, Bob Buckley, political reporter at WGHP Fox 8, and Angela Taylor, anchor here at CBS 17. Now for the rules. Candidates will have 30 seconds for opening and closing remarks, 1 minute to answer main questions, 30 seconds for rebuttals, and 30 seconds for follow-up questions. We will be using this bell to indicate your time is up. We've set time limits tonight because you deserve to hear where candidates stand on as many important issues as possible. We begin with opening remarks. Senator Tillis, you won the coin toss. We begin with you. You have 30 seconds.
Thank you. You're going to see two very different candidates tonight. I grew up in trailer parks, got my degree when I was 36 years old, and worked my way up through business. My opponent, Cal Cunningham, has been running for office since his college days. He lost the last time he ran for the Senate, and now he'll say anything to get elected. Not me. I believe you deserve results, not empty promises or broken promises. Tonight, I'm going to work hard for your vote, and I thank you for joining us.
Mr. Cunningham, you now have 30 seconds.
Thank you. I know the value of public service. I learned it growing up in Lexington, in church, and in Boy Scouts. I learned it in Iraq and Afghanistan, serving with the Army. Now tonight, Senator Tillis is going to try to tell you I'm somebody I'm not. That's because he's trying to distract you from his failed record in Washington. The fact of the matter is, time and again, he has caved in to the special interests and the partisan interests in Washington. Too weak to stand up for us here in North Carolina.
Angela.
Well, we want to start with the biggest story in the country right now, the replacement for the late Ruth Bader Ginsburg on the Supreme Court. You both have taken positions on the timing of the nomination. Tonight, we want to dig deeper into this. Now, Mr. Tillis, here's what you told the crowd at the President Trump rally in Fayetteville Saturday night.
As a member of the Judiciary Committee, I've seen the list of justices. He's going to nominate one of those justices, and I'm going to vote for their confirmation.
But in August 2016, you wrote in an op-ed piece, and I'm quoting you, Mr. Tillis, voters, not a lame duck president, should decide the composition of the highest court in the land. When Americans vote in November, they not only elect the next president and Congress, they will also determine the direction of the Supreme Court. Mr. Tillis, is this a flip-flop?
President Obama was a lame duck president on his way out the door. What we're talking about now is the role that I play in the U.S. Senate. It's called advise and consent. President Trump deserves to send forth the nominee, and I intend to hear him in Judiciary Committee and then move for passage on the floor. I've seen the list. Unlike Cal Cunningham's running mate with Joe Biden won't tell us who he wants to put forward. I think that's because he knows that he has to yield to the radical left and put forth justices that are not right for the American people. Joe Biden won't issue a list and wonder whether or not Cal thinks he should. And Joe Biden would support radical left activist judges that would be wrong for this country.
Mr. Cunningham, in 2016, President Obama nominated a Supreme Court justice in March of an election year. Do you think President Trump has that same right? 60 seconds.
Look, voting is already underway here in North Carolina, and I think we need to hear from the people of our state. And then the next Senate and the next president should take up the very consequential and very weighty issue of a lifetime appointment to the highest court in the land. Now, as you point out, Angela, that's not what we've seen from Senator Tillis. Within hours of the passing of Justice Ginsburg, who we should take a moment to respect, by the way, 27 years of service in the highest court in this country. But within hours of her passing, he called not only for an immediate vote, but that he would vote for whomever the president sends to the Judiciary Committee and to the Senate. Now, there is an important role for a United States Senator as a check and balance on the President of the United States. Rather than act as a check and balance, Senator Tillis has written a blank check to the president. He has forfeited his right to independence of judgment here on behalf of the people of our state, and that's wrong. That's something that I would never do.
I know these judges well because I serve on Judiciary Committee, and I've already seen them before the committee as circuit court judges. The president took the bold step of saying, this is what I stand for. The American people can decide based on the ones that I put on the list. Joe Biden is ducking the question. Cal Cunningham is supporting Joe Biden. We all know that there are going to be radical left judges who will vote against the Second Amendment, that will vote for keeping our schools and our businesses shut down. They will be literally, if Cal Cunningham has his way, they will be legislators in robes.
All right.
I would say this, the very comments that we just heard out of Senator Tillis are at the heart of the problem in the courts and the judiciary today. The effort to inject partisanship into our courts, rather than be an independent check and balance and be a thoughtful a check on the executive here. Senator Tillis wants to rush into a partisan process, one that is sure to tear at the fabric of this country. Right here in the midst of an election year, we should let the voters' voices be heard. We should allow the next Senate and the next president to make this decision.
Okay, you've both commented. Let's move on. Senator Tillis, you've seen President Trump's list of nominees. You've already mentioned that. Will you encourage him to nominate the North Carolinian on the list, Duke Law School graduate Allison Rushing? You have 30 seconds.
Allison Rushing would be a great candidate. There are a number of others on the list that I would fully support because I've seen their records. They've gone through the committee. And I have confidence in them. And again, we know what we're getting with President Trump, and we know what we're getting with these nominees. But Cal continues to duck the question about whether or not Joe Biden should put forth nominees. Let us see who those justices are going to be. They're going to be from the far left, radical, activist ilk of judiciary, and I think it would be wrong for this country.
So, Mr. Cunningham, should Joe Biden release his list of nominees?
Well, so look, this is just an effort to inject further partisanship into something that should be thoughtfully handled. That's why the American people should weigh in. That's why elections have consequences. That's why the choice between me and Senator Tillis has an importance to the people of North Carolina. The U.S. Senator, a U.S. Senator, has a very important constitutional duty of advising consent. Rather than write a blank check to the President of the United States, as Senator Tillis has, we should thoughtfully consider the nominee that comes to the United States Senate in the next Congress.
Cal, that was a yes-no question, and you did everything to avoid answering it. But the fact of the matter is, Joe Biden does not want to put a list forward. Look at it this way. If you accept what Cal says, get it ready for the next, leave it open for 3 or 4 months. Why can't the American people know now what Joe Biden is thinking with respect to the future of the court? It's a court that will not defend our Second Amendment. It's a court that will take us down a radical left path. And that's why Cal didn't answer your question.
Mr. Cunningham, 30 seconds.
The fact of the matter is that we are about to have an election, and Joe Biden is on the ballot. Donald Trump is on the ballot. Senator Tillis and I are on the ballot. And we have an opportunity to make the case. And with regard to a lifetime appointment on the highest court of the land, we should do that thoughtfully. We should hear from the American people. Angela, in your very opening question, Senator Tillis supported that very idea in 2016. He trusted and wanted to hear from the American people in 2016. He doesn't today. We are on the ballot. Let's let the voters decide.
Bob?
Republicans recently proposed a $650 billion COVID relief package that provided additional unemployment benefits, funding for small businesses, and for schools. So, Mr. Cunningham, you're on record saying you would not support that proposal. Why not? You have 60 seconds.
Sure. Look, that bill was written not to solve North Carolina's problems. It was written to solve Thom Tillis's problems. The fact of the matter is, it was designed as political cover. Why? It's because Senator Tillis said he would stay in Washington until he got new COVID relief. He said he would stay, but then he packed up ship and he came home without COVID relief. That bill falls far short. It doesn't give us, in fact, it cuts in half the unemployment benefits. It does not provide our local governments the support that they need to keep first responders, sanitation workers, police officers on the job. We hear from folks across North Carolina about the need for more support for education, to connect our young people, to make sure our teachers have personal protective equipment. Rather than work to get the job done, Senator Tillis caved into the partisan pressures. He copped on Mitch McConnell's bus and said, let's ride, rather than work across party lines to try to build consensus and deliver the COVID relief that he promised. He's let us down.
Senator Tillis, what's wrong with the Democrats' position that asks for some relief for the states? You have 60 seconds.
Well, first off, keep in mind what Cal just said. Last week, he said that he talked to business people who were struggling, needed help. That's the Paycheck Protection Program, a program that Cal criticized while the company he worked for was applying for a $1 million plus loan. He said we need more funding for education. We added a $5 billion beyond the Democrat proposal specifically for education so that we can open up schools safely. He said that we need unemployment. We're on the brink of losing unemployment benefits. That bill had an extension all the way through the end of the year. Cal seems to be for it, the bill that I voted for, but he said he'd double down and vote against it last week. Cal also said he thought that Nancy Pelosi's $3.4 trillion plan was a good starting place. $1 trillion to bail out New York and California. $11 million illegal immigrants getting free health care before we solved health care problems for our own folks, and 11 million illegal immigrants getting individual stimulus checks when we've got to help the people here.
Mr. Cunningham, why not get that $650 billion approved so that people have some relief now, and then you can go back and work on the rest of it? You have 30 seconds.
Bob, it's very clear. This was just a partisan cover effort to give Senator Tillis something to talk about during an election year. This was a caving in to partisan interests. In order to get things done in the Senate, you have to have Democrats and Republicans working together. That bill he referenced, which I have critiqued, that came over from the House, that one was dead on arrival when it got to the Senate. Of course the parties were going to have to negotiate. Rather than get the job done, Senator Tillis has caved into the partisan interests, unwilling and unable to stand up and deliver COVID relief.
Senator Tillis, on that idea, the failure of your bill that you voted for shows the need for some compromise. So is there a degree of state support you'd be willing to agree to, and would North Carolina have to be part of that relief?
Yeah, I've actually, the thing about what we have to do in Washington is get progress. That's what that bill was. But of course, we should provide individual payments. We should provide more flexibility to states. We've supported that. But Cal Cunningham said the starting place was Nancy Pelosi's bill, $1 trillion state bailout. North Carolina tax dollars going to failed states, and 11 million illegal immigrants getting free health care and stimulus payments.
You mentioned that. Is there a figure of state support you would go for, though?
Yeah, I do. I think what we have to do is just measure what the impact is on revenues and to provide it to states on an equitable basis. That's what we did to provide flexibility with the first $150 billion that we sent to the state, but not a bailout for California and not a bailout for New York, which happens to be the home states of Chuck Schumer and Nancy Pelosi. Not 11 million illegal immigrants getting health care for free and getting ahead of the line of people that we're still trying to fix health care for.
Angela?
Well, it's not just unemployment people are dealing with during this pandemic. New data from the U.S. Census Bureau shows 11.3% of our state's population did not have health insurance last year. Give me one specific proposal, just asking for one, that you're willing to support to reduce the number of North Carolinians without insurance. Senator Tillis, we'll start with you. 60 seconds.
Well, one proposal would be to vote on the COVID relief package, because the more people we get back to work, the more people who go back to the health care that they like on their jobs. Unlike Cal Cunningham, who supports Medicare for all, that would literally kick people off of the health care that they like on their jobs. If we get the economy moving, it's going to be the fastest way to get more people back on the health care rolls. And then we need to continue to look at ways to reduce costs and make insurance more affordable. The problem I have with the Affordable Care Act is people have policies that they can't use unless they're in a catastrophic condition, because they can't pay the deductibles, the copay, and the out-of-pocket expense. Cal's promising Medicare for all, which will be Medicare for none. Seniors will get a bad deal. It will bankrupt the country, and it will increase our taxes and put us further away from a sustainable health care solution for people in the United States. So let's pass that COVID relief package, get people back to work, and then get the economy back to work, which is the best way to provide health care for the broadest base of Americans.
And Mr. Cunningham, give me one specific proposal you're willing to support.
Sure, Angela. Well, let me just be very clear, because Senator Tillis has once again mischaracterized my position. I don't support Medicare for all. The fact of the matter is, the COVID relief measure that we were just talking about does not address health care. Here's what I believe and support, and this is, I'm hearing from so many North Carolinians. We must build on the Affordable Care Act. I'm going to fight to protect pre-existing conditions. People with pre-existing conditions, Senator Tillis has voted to take it away. I've fought for and would advocate for expanding Medicaid in this state. Senator Tillis, when he was Speaker of the House, he blocked it. Then he went to Washington and voted to take that option away, not just from our state, but all 38 states that have expanded Medicaid. I'm going to work for lower prescription drug costs. With $400,000 in PAC money from Big Pharma, Senator Tillis has blocked or voted against, opposed bipartisan efforts to bring down the cost of prescription drugs. I think we build on the Affordable Care Act and work to deliver affordable quality care for all Americans.
A few months ago, Cal Cunningham was in a primary. They ran ads against him saying that he didn't support the Green New Deal and Medicare for all. And he ran ads out of his own campaign account saying those attacks were false. So Cal was apparently for it, or at least said he was for it, when he was in a primary so that he could get elected. Now he's against it. He'll probably say the same thing about the Green New Deal. But the fact of the matter is, we have got to provide viable health insurance options for people. And what Cal's proposing is unsustainable. It would bankrupt this country, and it would put us further away from providing affordable health care.
Mr. Cunningham, 30 seconds.
Let me make it very clear. I stood up to the voices within my own party, and I opposed Medicare for all. And even Senator Tillis's patron, Mitch McConnell, ran ads right here in North Carolina, making it clear that I opposed Medicare for all. I believe we need a strong mix of private as well as public options. Senator Tillis is standing here on this stage tonight attacking my position because he has none. He's voted to take health care away from North Carolinians. I'll fight to expand it and deliver it to all North Carolinians.
Okay, now to the issue of police reform in America. Mr. Tillis, in a tweet on June 18th, you said in part, I am proud to co-sponsor the Justice Act to provide long-term solutions focused on police reform, accountability, and transparency. Now, Mr. Cunningham, on August 24th, you tweeted, the excessive use of force carried out by those whose job it is to keep communities safe is all too familiar to Black Americans. We must demand systemic change. Now, you both acknowledge the need for police reform, but what exactly does this mean? Do we reduce officers on the streets? Do we move control away from the police? And Mr. Cunningham, we'll start with you, 60 seconds.
Thank you very much. First of all, I'm proud to have worked with law enforcement as a prosecutor, as a military prosecutor, and as a federal prosecutor. In fact, I have worked hand in glove with some of the finest who wear the uniform. I was also proud to serve as the vice chair of Governor Cooper's Crime Commission, sitting shoulder to shoulder with the sheriffs, police chiefs, and other law enforcement officials. It's part of why, when this debate came up, I made it clear and put out a plan. I put out a plan to invest new resources in law enforcement, a new Department of Justice grant funding program that would help our law enforcement modernize, raise its standards, abolish policies or practices like chokeholds. It's in order to get the law enforcement that we deserve in our communities, we need to pay law enforcement what it deserves. This stands in stark contrast, though, to Senator Tillis. Rather than work across party lines to pass legislation in Washington, they tried to railroad through a bill written behind closed doors.
And Senator Tillis, do we reduce officers on the street? Do we move control away from police? You have 60 seconds.
Well, first, Cal just said he stood shoulder to shoulder with law enforcement officers. I find it remarkable that the Troopers Association, the Police Benevolent Association, the Fraternal Order of Police have endorsed me. And the reason for that is when they hear Cal Cunningham, in response to protesters in Raleigh just a month or so ago, were chanting, abolish the police, he tweeted out, I join you in your fight. And back when he was in the state Senate, he cut law enforcement budget by 22%. That vote that he said he was proud of when he raised taxes by $1 billion after he broke a pledge that he only made a few months earlier in the election to get elected. It's another example of Cal saying anything to get elected. Cal also said Cal's been funded $80 million so far by Chuck Schumer. Chuck Schumer told it to take a position against the Justice Act. Tim Scott, an African-American senator from South Carolina, understands that we have a problem. He wanted to put something on the floor. Cal must have had that rubber stamp FedEx to him because he was against getting on a bill that would have solved the problems and made sure police are funded properly.
Well, right now we want to show you the results of a new poll. Now, in some cities, President Trump has recommended using federal forces to quell riots. In our next Star Emerson College poll, North Carolina voters are evenly divided on this issue. Where do you stand, Mr. Cunningham? 30 seconds.
Well, first of all, I'm proud to have worn the nation's uniform for the better part of the last 2 decades, serving with our troops, including overseas in Iraq and Afghanistan. Our combat troops, our troops are trained to fight and win the nation's wars. And the American people are not the enemy. When they are in the streets in front of the White House, raising and exercising their First Amendment freedoms, that's not where troops should be. When fuel was added to the flames of unrest, Senator Tillis sat quietly, unwilling and unable to call out those voices that were putting those troops in the streets.
So you say no to using federal forces?
That is correct.
Okay, Senator Tillis, you have 30 seconds.
I believe if a governor or mayor asks the president for help, that the president should provide them with help. What I disagree with is Cal Cunningham being silent when 33 law enforcement officers have been killed in the line of duty over this year, when hundreds have been injured. He's not taking a position on what's happened in Portland, in Seattle, in Chicago. Our communities are less safe, and these mayors and governors are failing their people. I hope they do ask for help, and I do believe that the president would help them. But Cal Cunningham seems to be on their side with chance to abolish the police.
Let me make something clear. I take a back seat to no one when it comes to keeping our communities safe. Having served our nation in uniform here and overseas, having worked with law enforcement, having prosecuted criminals who have assaulted law enforcement, having sat shoulder to shoulder with our law enforcement leaders here in North Carolina to tackle some of our state's biggest challenges. I support law enforcement. They need resources. We need to work with them to raise standards. What we don't need, Angela, is a railroad job in the United States Senate, a partisan effort rather than a bipartisan effort to bring reform.
Senator Tim Scott is an African American from South Carolina who served in the Senate. He has seen what the peaceful voices are saying we need to address, and he put that in a bill that I was a proud co-sponsor of. Cal Cunningham wouldn't even allow the debate on the floor when Chuck Schumer could have controlled whether or not we moved anywhere. So it's not only not listening and responding to the voices, but it's not even allowing an open debate on the Senate floor to get through. He called it a railroad job because Chuck Schumer, who spent $80 million in this race so far, told him to.
All right, you both had time on this issue. We're going to move on. Bob?
I want you to take a look at something here. As of this moment, our national debt is almost $27 trillion, which comes out to more than $80,000 for every American. We'll give you your full 60 seconds in a bit, but first, a simple yes or no from each of you. Is the national debt an issue that needs to be dealt with by the next Congress? Senator Tillis, yes or no?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, so Senator Tillis, with that idea, is there any tax increase you would support to help get the debt under control?
Well, you know, Cal Cunningham thinks that a tax increase is how you get the economy back on track and back in order. That's why he broke a pledge and raised taxes by $1 billion at the height of a recession. Fast forward, I become Speaker of the House, and we cut taxes at the height of a recession. I would ask you, in the years following that, which worked out better? Cal's tax increase, which extended the recession in North Carolina, reduced revenues to the government. We retired debt by cutting taxes and getting our spending in order. Cal's proposing a Medicare for all that would break the budget and make it impossible for that number to go down. And he supports a package of $1 trillion to bail out states, which adds one more trillion up to $27 trillion with the current package he supports.
Mr. Cunningham, is there any tax increase you would support? You have 60 seconds.
Let me just start by saying, Bob, once again, we've heard Senator Tillis attacking me and avoiding the question. He stood on a stage very much like this 6 years ago, and he said that $18 trillion was too much national debt. We've now tacked another $8 trillion onto that national debt. Part of that is because Senator Tillis in 2017 backed a tax bill that paid out massive sums of money to the wealthiest people in America and the largest corporations. He told us that it would pay for itself. We know that's not true. $2 trillion tacked onto the nation's credit card. Understand, that's $6,500 for every man, woman, and child in this country. What have we gotten for that $6,500? We've gotten the pleasure of knowing that the vast bulk of it's been paid out to those who are already doing very well, while so many North Carolinians have been left behind.
While we're talking about...
We're going to get to that. As I ask you, Senator Tillis, since you have joined the Senate, it's true that the federal budgets have added more than $7 trillion to the national debt. And if your projected budgets in the second Trump term would add another $5 trillion more. So how is simply growing the economy, is that enough to deal with a $30 trillion debt?
I believe growing the economy is the first thing that we have to do versus putting people out of work by raising taxes. But I will tell you, it's interesting that Cal says the wealthy people getting the breaks. He knows a little bit about being wealthy. When he was making almost $300,000 a year, he got a tax credit from the state of North Carolina, $40,000 to renovate his house, including a butler's pantry. I didn't know what a butler's pantry was. I had to look it up.
Senator
and I'm
Tillis,
sure North Carolina taxpayer dollars shouldn't be spent on it.
That's not the subject we're talking about here, though, but you're still firm that you would not raise any taxes that you could see.
I think the first thing that we have to do is get spending in line and get the economy back on track. Cal wants to double down on taxes. He said he wants to replace tax cuts, and he does want to say a tax increase, but that's exactly what it is.
I'm going to let you answer that, Mr. Cunningham, but as you do, I also want to point out that the presidential nominee in your party says no taxes for anyone below $400,000. That's essentially the top 1%, which leaves 80% of the income on the table untaxed. Can we possibly get a handle on this debt if you don't touch that other 80% of people's income?
Well, let me say, first of all, what I've been campaigning on is expanding the earned income tax credit for North Carolinians, putting more money into the pockets of those who work for a living, expanding the child tax credit, making it refundable for parents, to put more money in the pockets of parents. That's what putting Washington on the side of working people, rather than, as Senator Tillis did in 2017, voting to pay out the wealth of this nation to the top 1% and the biggest corporations in the world, leaving behind so many Americans and so many North Carolinians who are fighting hard to put food on the table, to raise their families. Those are the people that I'm going to Washington to support, rather than toe the party line and capitulate and cave in to the partisan interests in Washington.
Marius. Thank you. Gentlemen.